Hey, how's it going, everybody, and welcome back into the SFS channel. My name's Gavin, and today I'm going to be talking about some must-own rookie players for 2021 fantasy football. I've decided upon these names based on a combination of team situation, position on the draft board as it relates to ADP, overall skill, talent, and everything else that's an important factor when weighing these players, risk, ceiling, floor, and whatnot. So I've taken a bunch of stuff into consideration, for every player on the list today. We've got about 10 names up on the board, and we're going to go through each and every single one of them in some good detail here. So if you're new around here, make sure to drop down, subscribe to the channel, and give this video a like before we get started. And without further ado, let's hit that intro and get into today's episode. Alright, our first players up on the board here today seem a bit obvious, but I think it's still important that we discuss them and talk about them because there are going to be some people out there who are more casual fantasy players, haven't exactly familiarized themselves with the rookie class of 2021 yet, so it's still good information to cover. Najee Harris, if you're new around here, if you're just getting dialed into fantasy information for the 2021 season, was the first running back taken off the board in the 2021 NFL Draft by the Pittsburgh Steelers in round 1. This is the running back with the most complete skill set, best size, best situation, potential to have immediate impact in his offense, be used as a workhorse back day 1. He's pretty much got everything going for him here, except for the fact that he doesn't have an elite offensive line, and I would say it would be generous to say he has an average offensive line. So that's the one major risk factor here. These are all rookie players, so there's some risk scaled into each and every single one of these guys, but that doesn't necessarily mean they can't be must-own players, because at the end of the day, at their draft positions, we're getting a very discounted price on very talented players who have a heck of a lot of upside, and that can turn into league-winning value, potential, production, and all kinds of that good stuff that we're looking for here this season. So Najee's got that big size to be used down in the goal line area, to be used as the plunger back who just gets in there in third and short situations. Who cares? Maybe it's first and goal from the 1 yard line, and they just need to have a guy to soar over the top of the O-line, score your touchdown. Najee will be that guy for this offense. He's the most explosive guy at that size. They've got Benny Snell there, but his talent does not stack up against a Harris who can also catch passes and be used as a dynamic player out in space. So by far the best rookie option this season is Najee Harris. If you're going to pick a running back from this rookie class, this is the guy to have your eye on. He's going right now anywhere between the early to mid-second round in leagues that have money on the line, essentially. So your most accurate league drafts are going to have Najee Harris being an early to middle round second overall round pick. Your second round draft choice will be Najee Harris if your league is of size of 12 or more players. So essentially, he's very valuable. I've already got him ranked as a running back 1 in those 12-team league formats, and he's a player that we should not be overlooking whatsoever, even though he does have some offensive line question marks heading into the season. The next running back up on the list here is Travis Etienne, and the next player, and I would say the second overall must-own player on this board, in terms of, I kind of ranked these in order of not only ADP, but in respects to how important I think they can be to our fantasy lineups. Travis Etienne was my top dog heading into the draft for Dynasty rankings of the rookie class of 2021. And then after hearing some rather concerning remarks and comments as far as it relates to his usage from head coach Urban Meyer, I scaled off him a bit. But I'm starting to see bright spots. I'm starting to see reasons why I should be liking him more and more. And that's encouraging because I love Travis Etienne as a player. I want to see him succeed. My mind immediately went to Alvin Kamara when I first saw him at Clemson. And that's what I thought when he got drafted with his former college quarterback, Trevor Lawrence. I was like, boom, obviously Drew Brees and Trevor Lawrence are very different players, but I was like, this is Drew Brees to Alvin Kamara 2.0. This is that elite running back and quarterback passing connection that we thought we weren't going to get to see now that Brees is out of New Orleans. So the thing that is making me trend back in the direction as to liking Travis Etienne better, and again, if you're new around here, haven't been dialed in this offseason, The remarks that made me question Travis Etienne's fantasy value is the fact that Urban Meyer wants to use him more in an offensive weapon role as a pass-catching wide receiver option almost. He's going to split Etienne out wide and ask him to run the route tree as opposed to having him work a 3-down back level. Travis Etienne is still listed as a running back in fantasy football leagues, but I think that if he is to earn starting opportunities, reps, in significant enough of a role in the passing game, he could be putting up fringe wide receiver 1 numbers in a running back slot, which is very good because although running backs are one of the most scarce positions in fantasy football, wide receivers are much deeper, but they also score more points in PPR leagues. So if you can get a player who, if Etienne can get himself somewhere between 8 or 9 targets per game, it's a long shot, it's a stretch, but as a fringe late 4th, early 5th round pick, it might be worth the risk here because he does have the talent as a rusher. Urban Meyer said if it doesn't work out there, he's going to move him back into the backfield where he'll be splitting carries and touches with James Robinson. That's another reason I was a bit concerned because I thought, all right, a first rounder is going to come in here. He's going to immediately overtake the undrafted player, although he had a great season as a rookie. I still thought it really wouldn't matter relatively due to the fact that they were investing such a high draft pick into Etienne. Nonetheless, I think that this is going to be very untraditional usage for a first-round running back. We're going to see him do things we don't typically see other players at the running back position, even Alvin Kamara doing in New Orleans. So it'll be something interesting to watch, to keep your eye on. There's definitely a lot of risk at play here, but there might not be another running back in this class that has the upside that Travis Etienne does. Again, please give me Najee Harris's floor over Travis Etienne, but man, the ceiling is what I really love here, and that's what makes this a must-own situation for me because the other backs at this point on the table just don't have that same upside. Moving into the next player here, my first and highest rated must-own wide receiver in the rookie class of 2021 is Devonta Smith. Yes, more so than Jamar Chase for the simple fact that I think Devonta Smith can walk in, and I hope that I don't prove myself right on my initial assessment of him in the offseason where I said I think he's going to get banged around the NFL, become a little bit injury prone. He's already having an MCL sprain right now, so he's supposed to recover from that. It happened about a week ago. The time frame was 2 or 3 weeks, so in a couple weeks we should see him back out there healthy and on the field. But man, this guy's got talent. He's got intangibles. He can run routes, do it all. The size was the biggest question mark for me because he's kind of a twig. He is as thin of a wide receiver as there is in this league, and he almost reminds me of a young Stephon Diggs who has bulked up recently, and look at what he's doing in Buffalo right now. But Devonta Smith can walk into this Philadelphia offense, and as I said at the beginning of this video, there is risk factored in and calculated with each and every single one of these picks, and that's why, for as talented as these guys are, as high as they're being picked off the draft board in the NFL draft, they're being scaled way back in fantasy leagues. Devonta Smith's a 5th or 6th round pick, because we still have these question marks, we haven't seen them at this level. So there's a lot of stuff that they have to either prove us right or wrong about before we can really say one thing or another. But he is clearly the most likely and the best candidate to become the number 1 receiving option in this offense. I would say if he plays 13 or more games this season, he will have over 100 targets. There's no question in my mind about it. If Justin Jefferson got 140 looks in 14 starts last season, Devonta Smith can hold his own and crack 100 even if he misses 3 or 4 games. So I think he'll come in here, produce touchdowns. I think he'll come in here and produce great routes, be a target magnet, have the ball thrown his way on frequent occasion, and you just can't overlook that when you can have a young quarterback dialed in on you, throwing you passes, and being your go-to guy. That's something that we can't pass on here. And if other veterans that have high upside at this spot on the draft board are already taken, you got to be investing some shares into the Devonta Smith market here in your leagues this season. And then, yes, Jamar Chase is still a must-own player right now, but I think that the crowded situation in Cincinnati makes him a little bit more desirable. His draft stock is higher, which also makes him less of an immediate value plug-and-play and more of you better be dang right about Jamar Chase because you're going to be feeling really low on yourself if you draft him up. He's not going too much higher than Devonta Smith is, but it's still going to sting a little bit more if you invest that level of a draft pick into Chase and he doesn't pan out. Right now, the reports out of camp is that he is underwhelming in the fact that he's not showing as much separation that is expected. When I cut on the college tape, I still see a transcendent talent or one who has the potential to be that. What I say, give the kid time to transition into the league. Give him time to get back into football. He didn't play for over a calendar year. He hasn't hit the field in ages. Like, a year in football time is a very, very long time. He's going to be rusty. He's going to have to shake things off. The thing that might be a little nerve-wracking is that the Bengals don't have, and their top corner from last season departed in free agency, they've got a bunch of number 2 corners on that roster. They are not terrible players, but they're players you would hope that your number 5 overall pick can separate against. So we're going to be looking for him to show improvements, make big strides, flash in the preseason. That's all to come here. I think he can do it because, like I said, for a player with his talent, the chemistry he has with his former college quarterback who he won the national championship with, this should be a very good fantasy situation. And although we've got veteran Tyler Boyd and second-year stud T. Higgins in that offense, I still think Chase can carve out the biggest role of the bunch in that offense and be a very prominent fantasy wideout. Elijah Moore. Now, this is where we get into some less popular names, and I would say that Elijah Moore still isn't a under-the-radar pick, but he's going a lot later down the board. Now we're getting into players that, if they're on the board in even the round that they're supposed to be drafted at, you take them because these players have too much upside, and they have, at this point in the draft, not really anybody has all that great of a floor to begin with. So the Jets are looking for a wide receiver 1. It's as plain and simple as that. And Elijah Moore was their early second-round draft pick. They've got a young quarterback. He probably, in theory, would connect with the guy in the same age category coming into the league with him. There should be an element of comfortability there. Elijah Moore plays out of the slot, but he can also stretch the field. He's not your typical Randall Cobb-esque receiver who's just going to run routes over the middle of the field, get banged down, and get you 8 to 10 yards a clip. Elijah Moore can fly. He can burst the top off the defense. For a playmaking quarterback like Zach Wilson, that can become incredibly dangerous and become a big-time fantasy asset for you. Maybe week 1, he doesn't come out here and beat the brakes off of secondaries. But week 7, 8, 9, once he's got some games under his belt, once he's got some NFL tape, once he and Zach Wilson can truly strengthen this in-game connection, I think there's going to be a lot of fireworks here, and I think these two are going to put up some pretty hefty numbers. I would say, and this is something that I didn't initially think on before today's video, but I would say Elijah Moore has the capability of putting up as many 100-yard games. I don't think he'll have more, but I think he could have as many 100 or more yard games than Jamar Chase, than Devonta Smith. Maybe he won't see as many targets. He's going to have to be a bit more efficient, but this is a player who can certainly do things that those players can do, even though he's a very different player in the way he goes about his business. The next guy up here is Trey Sermon. We're dipping back into the running back market here. The reason that I have a player in Elijah Moore ahead of these next two players who are both running backs is these running backs are highly, highly valuable. But I think that at their draft price, there are at times some other options on the table that can be a bit more intriguing. At Elijah Moore's ADP, I am strictly about Elijah Moore and that upside. I want that on my roster. I think that there's not too much discussion to be had at that point on draft day. Trey Sermon is a player who, when you look at him, the sky's the limit. This could be your Jonathan Taylor, your David Montgomery of last season, your Miles Sanders of 2019, the player that comes in as a rookie, fresh legs, late season, and wins fantasy leagues off of monster performances out of the backfield. That's what Kyle Shanahan does for his players too. You look at the track record, the names, the randos that come in here and just get it done for this offense. Trey Sermon's got all the talent in the world that any of those other players have, and he's also got some bruising capabilities as well that maybe he can have a higher touchdown upside than those guys. So I love what I see here. Again, we're talking late 7th, early 8th round pick. Typically, he gets reached on because players are starting to recognize the unique value he has. But this, again, I'm not going to tell you to do a crazy reach on him, but I do think that it is okay to reach up to a half round early to get a player of this caliber on your team, as long as you've already got a trio of established quality running backs that you can depend on for the latter part of the season while you're waiting for Sermon to get his opportunity and hopefully eventually break out. The next player I think has a bit of a safer floor than Trey Sermon, but maybe the ceiling isn't quite as good. I would say I love his ceiling, and especially in PPR formats, this is an incredible play here, and you have to be drafting Michael Carter in the 8th round of your full PPR leagues. But this isn't a player who's going to be a freak on the goal line. As opposed to Trey Sermon, who has bruising ability, who has the potential to go in there and be the goal line hog, that's not Michael Carter's game. He's efficiency. He's catching passes out of the backfield. He's getting into space, using his elusiveness, and making defenders miss. He is going to be more Alvin Kamara, not saying he is Alvin Kamara, but he's going to be more Alvin Kamara than he is Derrick Henry. Those are extremes on both ends of the spectrum here, but I hope it at least helps you visualize and entertain my point. So Michael Carter, again, playing for an offense in New York, they're probably not going to be a good football team this year. You're going to be trailing. You're going to want your third down back in the game. That should be Michael Carter because I think he's the best pass catcher of anyone on the roster at this point. Tevin Coleman's nice. He's a nice change of pace back. Maybe he'll see more goal line work than Michael Carter does, but LaMichael Pirine and Ty Johnson are not taking that role away from him. This is Michael Carter's job to grasp here and ultimately head into the season strong with. Now, Justin Fields. This was a different name before I recorded today's video, but we're still waiting for news on Rashod Bateman. He was going to be featured in today's episode, but I need to hear more about that injury. We need to verify the severity or non-severity of it. Man, I hope Rashod Bateman's all right. That was one of my favorite prospects heading into this year's draft. As a Packer fan, I was crossing my fingers on draft day. You can go back and watch my live NFL draft show. I was furious when the Ravens, I thought he was going to make it. He was falling, and then boom, Baltimore sweeps him up off the board. And we're left high and dry, and we got Eric Stokes. Hopefully that works out. I think he's a bit of a raw prospect. I went to Packers training camp, and he kind of got picked on all day long, but that's besides the point. Rashod Bateman, I thought, was one of the most complete receivers in this draft, and I thought he had Devontae Adams-esque upside and potential because of the traits and the overall game that he plays. But he hit the deck on a slant route. He's being defended by Marcus Peters, limped off the field, and it's not exactly a guarantee when we're going to see him again. We've got MRIs and some imaging we're doing on the knee here. So by the time this video goes out, maybe we'll know more, but this is recorded the night beforehand. So there's a potential that we don't end up hearing anything by then. So I took him off the list, but just know if he's healthy, if he's good to go, Rashod Bateman is absolutely a must-own player because he will take a hold of that number 1 wide receiver role in Baltimore like that. Marquise Brown dinged up off the field. Bateman had about a week or so to get work in that offense without Brown on the field, and I think that he's just a more complete player and should be more of a target magnet for Lamar Jackson because he runs all the routes. He's not just a deep threat. Mark Andrews is more of your red zone specialist. Hollywood's your over-the-top guy. Rashod Bateman's your do-it-all. He's your Swiss Army knife, run slants, out-breaking routes, curls, comebacks, posts. The dude is one of the most complete rookies I've seen in this draft class. So enough Rashod Bateman talk here. Justin Fields for the Chicago Bears. Why? A quarterback is typically not a must-own player in any sense of the imagination, especially a rookie. And I've talked about Trevor Lawrence, the reasons that I'm not so bullish on him, because I think that our expectations for him and Joe Burrow the last 2 years have been a bit too lofty based on the production we've gotten on the back end here. So why do I like Justin Fields so much? A, they're giving him time to sit behind Andy Dalton. And you would think to yourself, well, why wouldn't you want him taking game reps, getting used to things, playing with his offense, getting accustomed to his O-line? Because I don't want them tossing him into the fire before he's ready to do so. And that's something Matt Nagy is extremely dead set on not doing. He has literally said, I don't want to ruin Justin Fields. That's promising for fantasy owners. This is going to be a guy you're probably only looking at him in deeper leagues, because you're going to be wasting, quote unquote, a roster space on a guy who might not start for 6, 8, 10 weeks. But when he comes in, man, he is going to take this offense to the next level. Hopefully he can come in, be poised, make accurate passes, help them stretch the field finally with an accurate downfield thrower. And he's got some nice weapons to work with. I mean, you talk about A-Rob and Darnell Mooney, what just those two guys can do. You talk about a young second-year tight end in Cole Kmet who can make things happen down the red zone. He's got sure hands, not exactly the most athletic guy in the world, but he can do some nice things. And then David Montgomery out of the backfield, Tariq Cohen as a pass-catching weapon. There's just a lot of stuff I like here. And then they picked up a nice, oh man, I just redid his profile in the Rookie Dynasty Draft Guide. But they picked themselves up a nice slot receiver in the 6th round from North Carolina. I can literally see his face, but I'm blanking on his name right now. Nonetheless, there's a lot of things to work with here in Chicago. So I think that at the end of the day, you talk about the wheels he has. He can use his legs to pick up first downs, get in the end zone. There's just a lot between his skill set to his play style, to the offense, to the fact that he doesn't have to start right away that makes me like his long-term upside down the stretch this season a lot. And if you can afford to stash him, if you've got a top-end quarterback early on in your boards and you can afford to stash a later-on quarterback down on your bench and not start him for the most of the season, this could pay off big time down the stretch. If your starter has a tough matchup, goes down to injury, whatever the case might be, if we're talking a super flex league, maybe you pick him up as your 3rd or 4th QB, and you could be riding strong at the end of the year. Let's see. We're getting down to things here. We've got 2 players to go. Amon-Ra St. Brown is another must-own player for me. These next 2 players are probably guys who aren't being drafted in 8 to 10-man leagues, but if we're talking 12, 14, 16-man teams, 16-man leagues, even with just your typical 16 rounds in the draft board, these are going to be guys that are going off the board. So Amon-Ra St. Brown is currently not listed as a starter for the Detroit Lions, but he's got a pretty nice game. He's not a flashy wide receiver. He's not a player I expect to walk in here and control the target share day 1, but who knows? Maybe by week 6, 7, 8 with injuries, Rashod Bateman can never seem to stay on the field. We'll see if Quintez Cephas steps up and fulfills his role. Will Tyrell Williams, being a year removed from playing football, but much older than a Jamar Chase per se, will he be able to bounce back, ever get back to that 1,000-yard season he had in 2016, or at least that play style that he used to have? I don't know. There's a lot of question marks and not very many guarantees in this Detroit passing game. So my thought here is, for the limited, very nearly no draft capital risk investment here, why not take a chance on a player whose upside far outweighs the risk here? This is a player who I think could fulfill the quote-unquote Robert Woods role in the Jared Goff-led offense, because I expect them to run a very similar setup and scheme to what he ran under Sean McVay in Los Angeles with the Rams. I don't think Detroit's going to execute it as well as the Rams did. That's just common sense and logic, knowing that Dan Campbell and the kneecap-biting meatheads aren't going to do it to quite as high of a proper execution level, but he can still be a nice fantasy asset. He can go out there and pick up 6 for 70, 7 for 80, and just average a nice yards per catch clip. And if he's leading this team in targets at the wide receiver position, again, I said this probably 9,000 times this offseason, but TJ Hawkinson is the guy I have penciled in to lead the overall roster in targets. That's still a valuable role in this offense. And like I said, we're not investing much here. This is a player that can give us a high return on our investment and give us some big-time upside down the stretch. And then the last name here, Nico Collins. This is the deepest sleeper, but also I think still a must-own player on the board at this point. The other guys at this spot, their ADPs, where they fall in line with Nico Collins, are aging vets, injury-prone players. We've seen their best days of football, and I don't think that we're ever going to see them improve upon any seasons past. Nico Collins is a fresh player, a fresh situation, has got the chance with limited competition in Houston to step up in a big way and fulfill a role that really nobody else has the physical intangibles of doing. This dude is just huge. He's 6'4", can stretch the field, go up and win jump balls, win the contested catch in the red zone. Kiki QT and Anthony Miller can't do that. Brandon Cooks can't do that. Chris Conley's old. We've seen the best football of Chris Conley. He's not a star player. We haven't seen Nico Collins at the NFL level. At worst, You waste a 18th round pick on a player with a lot of upside and limited to no floor. But again, a lot of these rookies don't have a good floor. That's why they're not going earlier on in the draft. Take a chance here. It can pay off huge, potentially win you your leagues. And if Nico Collins were to score 7 to 10 touchdowns, you're looking back and thinking, wow, like this might have been the difference in my league. Maybe he doesn't come out here. Maybe he's more of a standard play. I would say he's probably not going to be a target magnet and soak up the lion's share of the offensive reps here. But maybe in standard leagues where you're swinging a little bit more towards the touchdown dependency side of things, Nico Collins might just be a great play this season. All right, there was 10 players that I think are must-own rookies for this fantasy season. Whether I like their floor or their ceiling or somewhat of a combination of both, there is a very distinct reason as to why I like each and every single one of these players. And hopefully through talking very in-depth about each one of these guys, you are able to gauge for yourself whether or not you want to weigh the risk and reward of these players at their current draft price. Go on, hop on to sleeperfantasy.com. I am not sponsored or associated with them in any way. I just find them to have a very useful and informational fantasy resource out there. You can simply just set up a mock draft board, and not even mock draft, but simply just associate players with numbers and their ADP, figure out where they're going, look at other players who are being drafted within 5 picks above or below them, and just kind of understand, okay, at this draft price, which of these names would I rather have or want to have the most on my teams, and figure out an order in that sense, because that'll help you a lot on draft day. And when that time comes for your fantasy leagues to get down, make the tough choices that'll impact you for your whole season, you will know and not have to make a split-second decision, a thoughtless and careless choice, and make a mistake that might impact the potential of your team for the full 17, 18-week year. So it's a big deal. These drafts are very important, and rookie players play a big part in that. They are the guys that help us really set the foundation and the stage for upside during the season, and especially those running backs tend to hit the ground running and be huge, big-time producers at the end of the year. So thank you all so much for watching. It was a bit of a longer episode today, but thank you all for sticking with me. If you're here right now, you're a true fan, you're a true supporter, and I could not appreciate you more. So drop this video a like before you head on out. Subscribe if you're new around here, and I'll see you guys tomorrow for the subscriber mock draft. Peace out.